Good afternoon and welcome to McCullough Management's How to Fix Any Project webinar series. This is the third webinar in the webinar series, pillar number 3, the invisible structures that move projects forward. It was originally titled Project Infrastructure, but this is a lot more around the mindsets that go into how and why you build specific project infrastructures for your project. So quick sound check. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Beautiful. Thank you. My name is Katrina McCullough. I am the founder and CEO of McCullough Management and the Project Whisperer, 15 years of project leadership experience. I have gone in, I became known as the fixer. So I would go into projects that were struggling and I would get them back on their feet. I've done project consulting, PMO setup, project staffing, and training. The McCullough Management themselves, we staff digital and software project managers, PMO directors, portfolio managers, coordinators, systems analysts, organizational change managers. We do have specialties in training and more. And we started this webinar series specifically to talk about if you are participating in a project that's not doing well, if you have a background in project management and you would like to know tips and tricks on how to get projects back on their feet and across the finish line, I do have a 100% project success rate. 100% of the projects that I have led have gone live with customer satisfaction. Very few of them leaving a trail of low morale team members behind. Those are the metrics that I use for project success. We do have with us today Priscilla Martiz, project manager at McCullough Management. She's been with us for a few years. She's the project manager on the LBUSD's ERP project. She has 5 years of project coordination and management experience. She's a project infrastructure specialist, so she helps to set up all of our project management infrastructure. On top of being able to lead projects, she's also project logistics and event planning. So all of our huge project events, she puts those together and she is amazing. And we actually have a little Q&A at the end with her so that we can ask a couple questions around kind of what she does and what makes her so successful at her job at McCullough Management. Just some quick housekeeping. I'm happy to make this as interactive as you want to. So if you do have questions, I am muting everyone now. However, if you do have questions, please put them in the chat. And then if I can answer them right away, great. If not, we can have a dialogue about it. And then I'll have open Q&A at the end where we can have people, if anyone has any questions they want to ask, please feel free to do it then. But I do encourage questions along the way in the chat. I will be checking those and I will be pausing to answer any of those questions as they come up. So we have a framework for what we call great project management. And these are the 5 pillars of which, if you have these, you have great project management. And the reason that's important is because if you're going in to fix any project, it is important to know how projects should be running, what the pillars of great project management are, so that you can then go in and figure out what may be broken, where the issues may be on your project. This is the third in the series. We're doing the invisible structures today. We did talk about the team. Obviously, on any project, you have to have the right people doing the right job. You have to have the right culture for project management. Running a project is different than running an organization, running a department. It's a different mindset. It's a different flow. So you do have to have a culture for that. We have had webinars on those too. And I can share those at the end, drop those in where you can find those posted on our website. Today, we're talking about invisible structures, which is project management infrastructure, but again, the mindset behind them. As well, 2 more webinars we have coming up are requirements and testing. Those are the bookends for every project. And where I've seen most projects fail is a lack of requirements by the right people, signed off by the right people, and not a robust testing strategy and testing infrastructure. And of course, no project is complete without change management and communications, overcoming resistance, and really building change champions on your project. That being said, let's jump into it. Today, we're going to talk about the invisible structures that move projects forward, focusing on human nature, information flow, decisions, focus, and information hubs, aka project sites. And then we'll open it up for Q&A at the end. Are there any questions so far? Because I'm about to jump right into it. Hey, all right, here we go. The number one thing that a project manager has to be able to do on a project is to understand human nature. Not just understand it, respect it, honor it, at the very least accept it. Very rarely can you change it, and you have to manage your projects to human nature, and specifically the humans that you have working on your projects. So many times when I see projects that have not been run successfully, part of the problem is the project managers have set up their project infrastructure based on how they want humans to be interacting with their projects, not the reality of how they are going to be reacting to their projects. And so there's gaps and there's holes and things are stuck and there's confusion and there's just a general lack of momentum. So how do we count for human nature? Number one, people do not seek out information. Very few people on your project team will actually on a regular basis come to your project site to do something. What are they going to do? They're going to ask you, where is this again? What is that date again? Can you send me this again? Can I get that link again? You have to be okay with that. You will have to spoon feed information. People, whatever information that you want to give to your team members, you are going to have to spoon feed it to them graciously. It's part of our job. It's why we're so important on projects. We are the conduits of information. And you have to make it short, make it relevant, and make it easy. I have slides that talk more about that. People are overwhelmed and tuned out. They are not paying as much attention to your projects as you think they are. No matter how good you are at speaking, no matter how well you write the emails or the status updates, most people are partially tuned in or half tuned in, and they will forget, and you will have to repeat yourself often. Think of it as job security. So you have to meet people where they are. Many people on your team have other projects they're working on or other jobs. If they are the end users or functional leads, they probably have other things they are working on. They are oversaturated with information. Usually oversaturated with information on the project itself, or they are oversaturated with other things they are working on, and you are just one tiny piece of what their day-to-day job is. So with communication, they're either oversaturated with too much information or they're undersaturated and they're not getting the information that they need to do their job. And very rarely will they seek it out. So you have to meet them where they are. People want just enough information to do their jobs. And so I know some people say, well, they have to know the why and they have to know the background and people have to understand like how this fits into the organization as a whole. Yes, that's relevant to their jobs. I agree with you completely. They do not need to necessarily know everything that's happening on the project all the time. They need curated information so that they know what they need to do their jobs. If what they're working on is cross-functional and affects other departments, that's part of this. That's relevant to their job. But there is the volume of content and touch points and decisions and information on a project is huge. And our job is to be on top of all of that. That is usually not their job. And honestly, often they're not very good at it. So we need to curate that information for them and give them what they need. So managing human nature, what you need to know. So when I'm talking about this, I will give examples. If you're going to send, let's say you have a huge project, and you have like 20 people on your team, and because of that, there's probably upwards of 20 to 30 to 40 action items across all the different people. What you will struggle with is if you send an email with a link to the action items and say, hey, everyone, we're meeting tomorrow. Please go through, check your action items, and update them. Some people on your team may be very good at that. Some are going to look at that and think, oh my God, that's so much information. I have to click on it. Now, how do I filter? I don't remember how to filter. And you get people who just go do something else. And so what we do is we actually will say, so, to a person A, here's your action items. We'll send it to them in an email, not a link they have to go open. We'll put the table in the body of the email with a link, and we'll say, you can do two things. You can go here and update them yourself directly, or just send me the updates and we'll put them in for you. And I'm happy to offer that kind of white glove service to the people working on my team, because my ultimate goal is project success. And that's why I'm a strong advocate for project coordinators and project admins on projects to help with that dissemination of information. Also, give them a week at a glance. Don't say, well, go ahead and check out the project plan so you know what's coming up. This is what we did last week. This is what we're doing this week. This is what's coming up next week. And here's specific to you. If you're working on a project that crosses multiple departments or multiple work streams, it's easy to be like, hey, everybody, here's everything that's happening this week. People will not necessarily read every individual bullet point. So it's nice to curate it down to, hey, HR department, here's what you need to be working on this week. The meetings that they required, any risks that are pending, and then if there's billing, especially if you're working on a fixed bid project and there's specific hours that are required for specific deliverables. I once had a project, it was website design, and our margins were so tight. And so when we would go through with the creative director and come up with the hours required to do the designs, I had to make sure that those team members did not go over those hours. And I had to make sure they knew what those hours were tied to. This is 20 hours for this set of designs, 100 hours for this set of designs, and it's due on this date. And even though it was in the project plan, and even though we had multiple status meetings, there was always confusion. So I started on Friday afternoon. I would create a sheet that says, hey, this is everything that was supposed to be done this week. This is what's coming up next week. And then individual team members, I would write their names, the amount of hours they had allocated for the next week, and what was due for them. So what I expected to have been done. And then, and this is true, I would go print them out and I would highlight individual members' names, and I would go put it on their desk after work every Friday or early on Monday. So when they came in, it was either on their keyboard, on their chair, and it said, you have 25 hours on this project this week, and I'm expecting this deliverable due. If you're going to go over, you have to tell me. If you're not going to get it done, you have to tell me. That is, and some might call that micromanaging. And to that, I would respond, project managers are in fact micromanagers, not on how to do your job, just on when it's due and expectations of how you communicate that back. So that is how you can curate and deliver relevant information. And then solicit verbal feedback. Sorry, micromanagers versus microcontrollers. Yes, absolutely. Solicit verbal feedback or written feedback. It is not enough to just communicate out. You actually have to get agreement from people on things, or you have to get their feedback. Does this work? Does this not work? Are we confirming this? Are we not confirming this? Are we, do you agree that we are ready to move on to the next phase? Do you agree that this is a risk? Do you feel like this risk has been mitigated? But you have to get people to respond to you. And I will say, there's so many times I've said in meetings, your non-response is tacit agreement that you are agreeing, but I actually don't do that anymore. I will go around and I will ask each individual person, like we're a committee that's voting, and I will say, you're okay with this now, you understand the impact to this, and I will do that consistently. I once had a project where I had someone who wouldn't, she would approve designs, and this was years ago before we had before we had the kind of infrastructure around digital signatures or signing off in collaboration sites. And so I would hand her the design, she would sign off on them, we would go build it. It's proprietary software for a real estate organization. She would then come back, test it and say, well, that's not what I meant. And I would say, well, the designs are here. And she would say, yeah, I don't remember approving those. So I actually started printing them and getting physical signatures on them and putting them in a folder and saying, and I told her, I apologize if that's patronizing, but I just need to make sure that when you come back later, you remember what we talked about. And that's such another important thing. People forget. We had this on the other one. People forget. They forget they agreed to something. They forget they completed something. They'll forget what is happening next on the project all the time. So you have to have an expectation and a plan in place for that. And lastly, well, not lastly, but last on this slide, be here now. There's so much multitasking that happens now. It used to be that people would come to meetings with just a notebook. We actually encourage people to bring their computers to meetings because we do want to be able to look at things together in real time. However, what that means is they have access to their email, they have access to other work they're doing, to Facebook, to dating websites. That actually happened once in a client meeting. I had someone on Match.com responding to a person. And I'm not against multitasking in meetings as a blanket whole, because in project management, you are in so many meetings. And so sometimes you're just you're needed for pieces of the meeting, and other pieces, maybe you do have to be working on something because you have a big deliverable due or you're leading a meeting soon. However, there are meetings where everyone does need to be paying attention because decisions are being made, things are being confirmed, risks are being mitigated, changes are happening, and you need everyone to agree on it, because if you don't, you start to implement the changes that are being made from that, or you're going to the next milestone, or you're working on the next deliverable, and you'll have someone in a future meeting say, well, I didn't know that this was supposed to happen. And that will happen on every project. Regardless of all of this, you will still have people say, that's so funny, I didn't know. And as project managers, we're very gracious, and we say, well, I'm so sorry, let me now catch you up to speed. What we'd like to say is, you came to every meeting and it's in all the meeting minutes, but sure, you didn't know. But we can't say that. So we have to continue, like I said, to spoon feed graciously. But I did get my team to agree that at very specific meetings, there was absolutely no multitasking, no checking emails. I don't care if something else was on fire. This project needed to be that important for this period of time. And it was a huge game changer in those meetings. Did not mean to hit that. Okay, so now we're going to talk about information flow. So we have an understanding of human nature a little bit, that you really have to cater to the people on your project. And you will have people on your project that are proactive, that do like to go, that will go into your project sites, that every time you send them something to do, they will be right on it. And we love those people. We celebrate those people. We thank those people. We're grateful for those people. You will have people who are reactive. So they'll do things maybe after you nudge them a time or two. And then, and this is what we don't want, you'll have people who are inactive. And those are the team members that you do need to be potentially working with and escalating as you need to, because inactive team members is absolutely how projects start to fail. So we understand human nature. So how do we now create the information flow to support those team members? Because we have one true north on this project, and that is that the project goes live successfully. So now that we know, we know our team members, we know the nature of how we're going to be working together. How do we set up the information flow to support them? And part of it is really understanding that communication doesn't happen when you send information. Just because you sent the email, just because you sent the status report, just because you sent, you sent the request, that's piece of communication. The full communication is when someone acts on it. So they have to know how to act on it, and you have to track that the action had taken place. So communication is the full cycle of concluding when you have confirmed that the end of that action is done, usually typically triggering the next action. So meetings, think of meetings as your central nervous system. And I actually get a little frustrated when people are like, oh, I hate meetings so much. I love meetings because I run them very well. And so if you have strong, if you have an ability to create a meeting cadence where you're actually creating a flow of meetings to support the flow of information, and then you're able to run meetings because you have a clear purpose on them. I have found that meetings are the most effective way to keep a project on track. And when I have gone into projects that have been failing, oftentimes it's because there are either not enough meetings or meetings are so poorly run that when people leave, there's often a what did we agree to? What just happened in that meeting? Or they're so long that people get fatigued in them, which is why you have to set up a specific kind of meeting cadence. So you look at the work ahead, you look at the people, you look at the information, you have the deliverables, you have your milestones, you have all of that in your project plan. Now you have to have a meeting structure that supports getting all of that work done according to when it needs to be done in the project plan. And they need to be intentionally sequenced. So there should be a flow to the meetings so that as you're having them, information, there's different inputs and outputs to every meeting. We have to have this meeting, we make sure everything we have there, that meeting informs this. So we'll have a status meeting that informs our executive steering committee meeting. We'll have deep dive meetings that's going to get us through milestones. When those milestones are checked off, we'll funnel that to the status meeting so we can make sure those are checked off in the status meeting. Every meeting needs, and I write this in the meeting agenda, in the calendar invite. I won't write who the owner is because it's usually me. A clear purpose, and it'll just say purpose, a very specific purpose. Who should come to this? This is intended for defined inputs or how to prepare. We're going to be reviewing this. Please make sure that you've prepared ahead of time, a very focused agenda, often with timestamps if I can, and then an output. By the end of this meeting, we should have accomplished this, and this is required for this next milestone. And I will sit and pre-plan those even before I've built an infrastructure, because I do believe that your infrastructure should be built around the people and the work and the meetings that are required. And so I'm going to pop out and share. So we will create meeting frameworks for every project, and you can just see how many meetings are required. Now, some of these are only for tiny portions of the project, right? If we're doing testing labs, those are good. And we'll talk about testing labs in the next webinar because those are some of my favorite parts of projects. But obviously, you're not testing the whole length of the project. Those are very specific. And who will be coming to those? The technical deep dives, the triage meetings, go, no go meetings. So you can just see all of the different types of meetings that we will have on a project, and we have those mapped out ahead of time. And so to prepare for a meeting, and I know this seems kind of rudimentary. However, on a lot of projects that I have worked on, people will show up to a meeting, including the project manager, and be setting up for the meeting as the meeting starts. And so everyone who comes to the meeting is not prepared. You spend half the meeting just trying to catch up. And the meeting is your real-time information flow. It is so important that you are able to accomplish what you need to accomplish in those meetings. That's how you stay on track with your project. That's how you keep momentum. That's how you reduce confusion. So before the meeting, This starts up here. You review your meeting requirements. What is it that I expect everyone to have done for this meeting? And then you go, and again, this is curating information, solicit updates from your team members. Hey, I need you to update your action items. Can you please make sure that you've checked out the project plan and those things make sense for you? So if your meeting, say, is on Monday, I would do that Friday, in the morning. We're meeting on Monday, make sure you have these things prepared. When you get that information back, you incorporate those updates as best you can. So when you're in the meeting, you're not trying to get information, you're confirming information that's been given to you in support of that meeting. So I want to make sure that's really clear. You don't have to spend the meeting getting all the information from people. You should be able to get that information ahead of time. And then you're sharing it with everyone, confirming, refining, editing in real time together, which is a deeper dive and a more meaningful way to spend time with people. Sitting in a meeting and going, what is your action item again? Did you finish this again? Did you do that again? That can be a waste of other people's time. So the more you can have that done, and then you're updating in real time. You're making those changes in your project infrastructure, and we'll talk about this in a few slides, in real time. So you have the action items up and you're updating them. You're not taking notes. You're updating them there on the screen so everyone is confirming it. When the meeting is over, you take maybe 10 to 15 minutes to make any little last minute refinements that you need to. You send it to everyone. So everyone gets the meeting minutes, everyone gets the action items, everyone gets the notes. Then you follow up individually. Hey, I just wanted to make sure that we're good for this, and you take the time to see those things that you might need to do a little more calling out, a little more one-on-one work, a little more hand-holding. You don't do that in the big email to everyone. You start working one-on-one with people. And that is how you're able to, in your meetings, really get the most out of everyone's time. So here's a couple other tips and tricks. Number one, close communication loops. I love this quote, by the way. Close communication loops. If you don't close communication loops, you are creating communication gaps. What do I mean by that? I start every meeting with what we talked about in the last meeting, just to make sure everyone knows these action items are closed, these risks were officially mitigated, this deliverable is completed, we're on to the next deliverable. I don't assume that people know that something is closed. I don't assume that people know that a task is completed. I make sure I call that out because so often someone will say, I don't actually think that's done. And then someone else will say, well, I closed it. And then all of a sudden you're having a dialogue because it's not really closed. So if it wasn't addressed in the meeting, it wouldn't be addressed, but it would sort of be like gone. And that leads to, people can feel that in projects. We're like, didn't we talk about that last week? Whatever happened with that? Did somebody finish that? And there's sort of like these open gaps. So you want to make sure you're closing those. Whatever you talked about last week, you're closing the loop on it this week. Oftentimes when I share action items or risks, I will share whatever's open, whatever's new, and then whatever was closed between the last meetings. I do not share the running list of all closed action items, all mitigated risks, all completed tasks, because that's too much information. But I have actually seen that in meetings where there's just like the status report is like 15 pages long. Don't do that. Don't do that. You've got to make it relevant. The list is there. Someone can go see it anytime they want to, but we only need to talk about what is immediate and what is relevant. Again, we talked about always asking follow-up questions. I will hear all the time if I miss a couple status meetings because I've been out sick or I went on maternity leave, for example, I'll come back and I'll hear, our status meetings got down to like 15 minutes. And I know right away, I'm like, this project's on fire. Because on big, complicated projects, sure, at the end of a project, you can probably have 15-minute status meetings. But if you're in the heart of it and you have 10 people attend a status meeting and you're done in 15 minutes, you have asked no questions. A person has been like, I'm good, I'm on track. And the project manager will say, okay, good. Next, how are you doing? I'm good, I'm on track. You have to ask questions. What are you waiting on? If someone says, I'm not waiting on anything, I will reiterate. So what you're saying is your deliverable is due next week. And there is literally nothing that will prevent you from getting that done. Well, okay, so you are waiting on something. Let's talk about what that is. Who else needs to be informed? That is so important to ask that. Who else needs to be informed? Or as a project manager, you probably know who needs to be informed because it's in your RACI diagram. So the other way, the other way to ask that is, have you made sure so-and-so is weighed in? Have you gotten so-and-so to look at this? And so many times I'll have people go, I totally forgot. Okay, well then it can't be done. If there's someone who's supposed to be informed or consulted as part of this deliverable, you have to make sure they're weighing in. And then what are your main risks or obstacles? Like, what are you concerned about right now? What would make this not go well for you? I like to answer those questions. As a project manager, I am often the least technical person in the room. I actually want to do something called the least smart person in the room. But I have become okay asking the questions so that I can get to the point where I say, I'm so sorry. I hate to ask this again, but I'm not clear. I need to understand better what you're talking about. I need to understand how to, what this means or what the impact of this is. If I have project managers who are okay not knowing, then that is a concern for me. A project manager should never be okay not knowing something, not understanding. Now, obviously, there's nuances to that if they're talking about specific code or if they're talking about a very technical integration. That's different. I'm talking about you have a very clear understanding of what that person needs to do, when they're going to do it by, what it's going to impact, what it's going to trigger. If you're sitting there going, I have like literally no idea what this means, you have to keep asking questions until you do. No rabbit holes. Unless you're in a designated deep dive, do not let people go down rabbit holes in meetings. Have designated meetings for rabbit holes. And we'll talk about that. Have designated deep dives. But if you are in a status meeting and someone has brought up an issue and you start to solution that issue in the status meeting, everyone else around you is going to zone out. You're not going to actually get to everyone's status meeting, or the meeting is going to go longer and it's going to be a meeting that everyone hates. So you have to be able to stop it when it's happening and say, you know what? Let's figure out what meeting we're going to address that in. And in the status meeting, get it on the calendar, get it planned, or have it as an immediate action item that you'll do after the meeting. But do not let your team members go down rabbit holes in meetings. I use the tip and trick of 5. So try to curate your information to the top 5 action items per person, top 5 risks, top 5 tasks that are coming up. Obviously, sometimes there's more, sometimes there's less, but it's good to have that in your head. So you're trying to think about what is it that this person needs to know. And that's your job as a project manager. That's what makes you so good at your job, is your ability to actually have a pretty clear understanding of what that information needs to be. And then I love meeting minutes. I take meeting minutes. I use them. Put everything in a list, though, a SharePoint list, or an Asana, whatever your action items. Don't put a long list of action items in a OneNote or a Word document or a Google Doc. Don't do that. It's so hard to track and it's so hard to keep the integrity of those. Put them in a list. You can filter them, you can disseminate them, you can sort them, you can leverage them that way. Additional meeting types. I just talked about these deep dives. This was so important on our meetings. I had a project where there were so many integrations, roles and permissions. There were so many things to talk about that we had to have designated deep dives on them. So I actually had a deep dive tracker. And if I was in a meeting and we started going down one of those rabbit holes, I would pull up the deep dive tracker and I would say the next available open deep dive is this date. And they were on everyone's calendars. They were sort of blank. They were agenda lists on everyone's placeholders, on everyone's calendars. And then we would go through and say, okay, that one, this is the next available date. Here's all the people that need to come. And we would just have like 1 or 2 deep dives pre-scheduled for the length of the project weekly to account for those. Also, I love working sessions because I hate when someone hands me a large document or a large something to do and then says, go ahead and give me all your feedback on it. I love to actually work together. So we're going through and we're redlining on working sessions, or we're building out a PowerPoint, we're building out a status report, we're doing things. So by the end of the meeting, the work is done. So it's not another meeting. It's more like a productivity meeting. I also have sub-project status meetings. So if I have a huge project and I have a lot of different work streams, conversion, integration, maybe it's different departments, whatever it is, I will have either bi-weekly or monthly status meetings where it's just a deep dive on that particular department or work stream. And then that way I can funnel that information back to the overarching status meeting. You can't have those weekly. Try not to have them weekly. You'll kill yourself. Bi-weekly when you're in the thick of it, and then it went to monthly afterwards. And those were game changers. And then, of course, you're going to have daily meetings. You're going to have your daily stand-up. I've been on so many projects where they didn't have daily meetings. And so by the time you get to next week, if a deliverable is not due, you've lost a week. That happens 2 or 3 weeks in a row. That's a significant delay in your project. So we started having the daily sort of prioritizing meetings. All right. And the reason we have meetings, what are we trying to do here? Why are we trying to push information through? The majority of what we're doing with information is to make decisions. That is what we're trying to get at. We're trying to get approved designs. We're trying to get development signed off on. We're trying to understand what we need. We're ultimately trying to get to decisions. It is estimated, I think this came from McKinsey, managers make around 70 decisions a day. So I feel like project managers probably make more than that. And organizations where leadership, including project managers, supervisors, can make decisions in under an hour has a 40% higher project success rate. This came from PMI. You are making decisions constantly on projects. Who needs to be invited to this meeting? How are we rearranging this? And you have to make them quickly. As a project manager, you have to be okay. Obviously, you have your large decision-making framework. I hope you have it on your project. You know, what decisions can be made tactically, what decisions need to be made operationally, and what are those big strategic enterprise decisions that have to go through a governance or a steering committee. You should have that mapped out. You should absolutely know what decisions can be made at the project management level and what decisions need to be made at the executive level. But underneath all of that are still just these quick tactical decisions that have to be made constantly. And I had someone tell me once, I went onto a project that had a project manager that had tons of meetings and all the red, green, blue or red, green, yellow status reports, like all the best practices in theory, but they just things just weren't moving. And it's because there were so many of these tactical decisions he just didn't feel empowered to make, and he wanted everyone to always be able to make those decisions. Everything had to be a committee. No, you have to be okay making those. Things have to be able to move. And this person once told me, as soon as you started on the project, it was just like we had momentum. That is what a project manager creates, momentum. But part of that is understanding human nature, creating information flow accordingly, so you can be making these decisions quickly. Operational decisions can take anywhere from a day to a week, ideally no longer than a week, but sometimes you do have to route things through. And then your governance, typically you meet bi-weekly or monthly, so you have those key decisions that come up once a month. And those are more like the big changes, like change in scope or change in timeline, change in budget. You know, so you're spending your time getting all the information, the recommendations to take to your steering committee. But you're constantly making sure you're curating that information so that you can make effective decisions quickly and you can feel confident about the decisions that you're making. So on top of making sure you're curating information for your team members, you also have to, in support of making decisions, have to make sure that you're focusing on your project as a whole. So your project will have multiple deliverables, multiple milestones. You cannot do them all at once. And I know that might sound like well, of course, Katrina, that's a given. It's not a given. I have absolutely, in projects that I've seen struggling, I have absolutely seen a lack of focus on what people should be working on. You cannot solve X until you've solved Y. So look at this project. And if someone's a very adept mathematician and you have an issue with this, go ahead and tell me in the chats. But I love this analogy because I have worked on, I've seen I'll give an example. There was people who were taking multiple meetings, working on post-go live governance support structure. And I was like, yeah, but but we don't have designs approved. In fact, we're delayed on designs. Well, I know, but post go live governance is so important. For sure, it absolutely is. But you're taking up valuable meeting time and people's effort and energy and bandwidth when you don't even have an approved design. You're not going to get to a go live if you don't get your designs approved. So we can postpone these meetings for a few weeks and make sure we're focusing on what we need to be focusing on. Well, yeah, but I was told to solve for X. Okay, but you have to have Y first. Yeah, but I don't know what Y is, but I was told to solve for X. And managers will say, well, I need a report on this. And so you have to be able to go back to your managers and say, I will absolutely get that report to you at this date and this time. But right now, we need to focus on this. Here's why. Here's the impact if we don't get it. So if you give your leadership that information, normally they will be able to support your decisions. That goes back to culture and understanding the culture of project management. So what you're really asking yourself is, what's the Jenga piece? What's the piece that makes the whole tower fall? Do not be focusing on this little top piece up here when you've got another piece being pulled out that's going to make the whole thing fall. Focus on the Jenga piece. And last but not least, now you know how to set up your information hub. Now you know how to create your project sites, because now you're doing it in support of how you're going to run this project. Now, if you do the same types of project over and over and over again for different clients, you might have a template that you can use, and that's fine. But if you're going into your clients or a new project or a new department and you're working with a new team and it's totally different, I advise not to come armed with, well, this is how I do it. This is what we've always done. I advise people to come in and create your information hubs in support of the information flow, your decision-making framework, your escalation paths. And so I like to advocate strongly for one system for all. I get a little bit frustrated when you've got a site over here and then a thing over here and then another place over here for documents, and I've got my testing and training over here, and I've got my, I like to try as best I can to find systems that can allow you to do it in one stop. The most important for me being document collaboration. So because I'm in very large scale software projects most of the time, we are constantly refining Word documents, Excel documents. I prefer a place. I know people who really like, let's say, Smart Sheets, and you have to create a link back to the document. And that's fine if that works for you. I'm actually not advocating for one. I am project management infrastructure agnostic. I'm fine with whatever works for you, as long as you're able to manage it effectively. If you're working with 100 different documents, which is what we just did at LBUSD, I cannot be managing links. There has to be a project site where we can be collaborating in documents within the project site itself. It's built to support your information flow. So we created sites per functional business process as opposed to maybe phase. Each site had their own documents, they had their own wiki, they had their own place in the project plan. And then I really strongly advocate for intuitive information architecture. If I am a team member and I go to the site, will I know where to go? Will I know what to do? Will the information be, someone asked me a question, it's 5 o'clock on a Friday, project manager's gone, I log into the site, can I find it? Can I get to it? And you have to test that out with some folks and make sure that that's a yes. Because your hub, your project site is like an art museum. No one will go to it. They're not going to go to it. I mean, maybe a few, but most people won't go to it. But if they do, they better find a masterpiece in there. It is so important that they can find what they were looking for. And it is nice to hear, because I've had that happen before. Oh my gosh, someone asked me a question and I went right there and boom, I saw it. I remembered what you told me. You can also create little cheat sheets for people, so if you're trying to find this, just click here. You don't even have to go to the homepage of the site. We'll drop you right in. So I've created sites where the cheat sheet's on the front page. Hey, what are you here to do? Are you here to do this? Click here. Are you from this department? Click here. So you're trying to, again, you're creating those information flows with information architecture. And oftentimes on project, that means having to go back through. So we just finished a huge requirements gathering session. We went back through all our documents and reorganized them because they do get a little messy in the moment. But then we created a very clear structure for them. These are just samples of what I mean when I say project sites. I'm a big fan of SharePoint sites because I like to do document collaboration. I know Asana is a very popular. Jira, lots of people like to use Smartsheets. I have run an entire PMO years ago, I'm almost embarrassed to say, on Excel and MS Project. And guess what? We got more projects done in 2.5 years than the entire 10 years prior. Huge enterprise-wide, training hundreds of people projects, including a mainframe upgrade, which was above my pay grade because I'm software, not hardware. But we needed to upgrade the mainframe in order to do the project. So whatever project sites are the end. Once you know how you want to run your project, then you create your project site in support of that. I'm going to leave you with this last. 90% of all your information updates should be done directly in your information hub in real time. So what I mean by that, don't print out your status report and make notes on it and then go back later and type it out. That makes my brain explode. It makes me so frustrated when I see project managers taking notes on paper or taking the action items, downloading them to Excel, making notes in a column, and then going back later and changing them. Make your changes in real time in a screen while people are looking, because then you don't have the back and forth of, oh, that's not what I meant. I don't think you did that correctly. Sometimes I'm not the world's best typist. Sometimes I will fat finger something. Sometimes I need to say, 100%, and I say, 80. Oh, that's a bad example, but you understand what I mean. I want someone in real time to say, hey, that's not right. So I don't do it over here, send it out, wait for feedback, go change it, send it back. I want that information in real time. What I do on projects is I will open up like 10 action items tabs. So where it says, create new action item, I'll open that new tab, open that. So I have 10 blank forms ready to go. And if a new action item comes up, boom, I'll go right there and fill it out. Or if you have the ability to just edit in the grid, that's fine too. But I will add them in real time. And I'm okay making people just sit calmly and wait while I do that. Because I know project worth of doing that. I know how important it is to make sure that I'm doing that in real time. One, because it's good for the team members to see it. It actually really helps in terms of having people not multitask. But two, I've got other work to do. I don't want to spend as much time managing my project infrastructure as I do managing my project. And I want to reiterate that. You should be spending more time managing your project than managing your project infrastructure. So if you spend an hour after every meeting making updates, then you are not effectively managing your time within that meeting. It should be 10 to 15 minutes after every meeting. All right, I am going to bring Priscilla Martiz in. I'm going to ask her a few questions, and then if there's any other questions that people have, start putting them in the chats. I printed them out because we're all very, yes, hello. All right, so I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen for just a second so that she and I can be seen here together. Okay, so Priscilla, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
And Priscilla came really armed with a lot of fantastic expertise. But I am curious, when you did join McCullough Management, what were like maybe 2 or 3 of the processes that we had that were kind of different that you liked?
Yeah, so I have 2 that I already previously brought over, and one was just like always making sure you know what's coming up next. So that just really helps like the team just know all the deadlines that are coming up and making sure like nothing catches us off guard. And then the other one is just instantly catching things right away. So even if like you're in a meeting and someone says an action item for a different topic that's not necessarily within that meeting, I still like to take it down because it could be valuable for planning later on or just like solving a problem that could come up. But the newest practice that I did love leveraging in this project was working sessions. So that was definitely something that I never really done prior, being able to sit with your manager for an hour or two and just really walking through any like approvals or just like working on a PowerPoint or just unblocking decisions. That was really pivotal because, sometimes you are waiting for something to continue your work. And it's really nice knowing that you're leaving this meeting, just knowing that the work's been done and you're confident that things are just moving forward. So that was really one of the best practices I've learned thus far.
I love that. That actually speaks to human nature because I'm always working on so many things that we really turn those working sessions into managing my human nature. And then I would have them with other team members too, where, instead of going just back and forth on documents, we would actually sit and make updates to those documents together in real time. We also did that with our clients. We would do working sessions with them constantly. So we weren't just sending information over, we were sitting. And so by the end of the meeting, things were actually done and approved. So I appreciate that. I appreciate it. And you are so good at catching things, right? Like I've never met someone who's as good at the end of a meeting at saying like, so these were like the 5 things that randomly got brought up. Um, so how do you, I definitely don't have my questions right here that I'm looking at. So how do you proactively support the flow of information on a project? Like, how do you kind of set up your time, your days, like your own personal infrastructure?
Okay. Well, I definitely like to set up my days the day prior. So I know when I come in the next day, I know what I have to accomplish. And then I also love checking my calendar for like what's happening the following day, just in case if I like miss like booking a room or an agenda or anything. So I like catching that. And then coming in the next day, I will check my emails just because you never know when something urgent is going to pop up. And then I'll go through my to-do list. And then I will always check my calendar again for that same day just to make sure everything's really good to go. There aren't any surprises. But I really rely on like easy to use tools. So having a clear project plan to really track progress, either like stand-ups or like the agendas that are shared in those stand-ups to really keep discussions focused. And then also action lists. So just making sure I'm keeping up of like everything that needs to get done so nothing falls through the tracks. And I make sure that I use these tools like not just on my day to day, but I make sure I know what's coming up like within the next 2 to 4 weeks. And that really helps me like flag any bottlenecks that could possibly pop up. And it also allows me to like remind the team of what's coming up next and make sure nothing really sneaks up on us. And that really helps our team stay organized, but it also helps me stay organized and prevents any like stress or like last minute scrambles.
I love that. That goes to like not being okay, not knowing. Like
Yeah.
Priscilla is so good at making sure she knows what's going on projects uh, in a really effective way. Uh, we call her like the glue, the central nervous system, like the everything for our projects. How do you decide like how to prioritize? We sort of talked about prioritizing, and I know there's like always so much going on. Like, what's your system for deciding what's going to get attention?
Yeah, so for me, prioritization really comes down to urgency and effort. So obviously in projects, there's going to be deadlines and dependencies that really need to be met, and those are obviously going to rise up, higher to the list. But I also think about effort. So if it's something that is easy and I could do quickly and it unblocks the team for them to continue to do the work, I'll do that. If it's something bigger, I will plan against a timeline so it doesn't sneak up later. And then once I make those decisions, I just make sure it's visible to the team. So that might be, trackers or like project updates or just like a quick reminder on our stand up or email or something. So they really know, what needs to get done. And then I also just always make sure that priorities align also with like leadership goals. So not just urgency, but also make sure that we're accomplishing the things that matter to our client and stakeholder. So that, yeah, so that really helps.
Oh, I love that. And you're very good at it. I think that we're always able to make sure that we're focusing on the Jenga piece, the thing that we need right now. But also, I mean, Priscilla's so good at asking, like, what do we want to work on first? What do we actually need to do? Like, she's so good at making sure that she's clear with the team what their priorities are as well. Does anybody else have any additional questions? Thank you, Priscilla.
Yeah, thank you. I think I did see a question from Alex on the chat.
Oh, yes, thank you. Oh, all right, here we go. Relating to your micromanaging point, do you have any recommendations for situations where you're working with someone who you found needs those repeated and self-reinforcing reminder summary, but also reacts poorly to being managed in this way, especially when they don't report to you or above you in the chain management? There is a subtle nuance to being able to, how do I want to say this? Celebrate how much that person has to do, how much work they're doing. I know how busy you are. You have so many things that you are working on, and I'm happy to take as much of this off your plate as possible. I really just want to make sure I have a chance to follow up with you and make sure that we're staying on track, because we need to make sure that we're waiting on this. There's sort of a way to make it seem like you're not nagging them, but you're in deep support of them, and that you enjoy that. I'm here for you. This is my job. You are so busy and important. And I don't mean that patronizingly. There's probably things that these people are doing that are incredibly high volume, and they might be stressed. There might also be things that are happening at work. And so there's just there's a subtle shift in the like, okay, I already asked you this. Can you do it again? Okay, but like, I need you to follow up on this. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily how you do it, but I'm just trying to illustrate very distinct differences between that and the like, I'm really looking forward to your feedback on this. I need your help on this. The team needs this information. So what can I do to assist you? How can I support you? If that makes sense, just that subtle shift. And then behind the scenes, you can roll your eyes. Any other questions? We are almost at time. Look at us coming in with 1 minute to spare. All right. Join us for our next webinars, Pillar 4 and Pillar 5, requirements and testing. The bookends and blockers of every project. This is what sinks your ship. This is your glacier. And then Pillar 5, change management and communications, overcoming change resistance, building a coalition of change champions. We hope to see you on those next ones. You can always find us at mcculloughmanagement.com. Or a very large LinkedIn quote, a very large LinkedIn URL, but McCullough Management LLC on LinkedIn. Please do join us. Let's become friends. We do promote all of our websites there, and we'll start doing more newsletters and podcasts and Ask Me Anything. So we look forward to seeing everyone at any of our upcoming events. Thank you so much. Have a fabulous day.